Hey guys, just back again. Want to do another review. This time we're going to review Steven Bartlett's new book, The Diary of a CEO, The 33 Laws of Business and Life. And I can tell you, after reading it, it is exactly that. It is truly 33 laws that can be used in either business or life. Really packed full of some amazing information. So I want to get stuck right in here and just give you my take on what I took away from it. So to start, let me just make this a little bit smaller. If you're not familiar with Steven Bartlett, well, he's a very impressive young man. He At the time of actually this publication, I believe, because he was born in 1992, is now 2023. That would make him, I think, 31. If I do quickly the math in my head, I think he's 31, maybe 30. But he he's known for a number of different things. Not only is he, a world-class entrepreneur, investor, and public speaker. And by the way, when we talk about his public speaking, I recently had the pleasure of attending the 2023 Dublin Wealth Summit, where he was the keynote speaker. And trust me, it was amazing. I can't even express how impressed I was with him. Um, I thought I was going to be a little bit disappointed because when I seen him come onto the stage, I knew what time it was, as far as how much time was left in the conference and the summit. And he was only going to be able to speak for maybe about 30, 35 minutes. So I thought, yeah, I was going to be a little bit disappointed. But I tell you, I wasn't. Not at all. He packed a lot into that time. But in the event that you're not familiar with who he is, well, he's best known for a few things. Not only just a world class, entrepreneur and investor and speaker. He's also on the Dragon's Den, the UK's version of the Dragon's Den. He actually joined in the 19th season, and at the time he was only 28 years of age. So he made history primarily as the show's youngest ever dragon. He also, which I'm sure many of you follow, is he's the host of the Diary of a CEO podcast. Not to be confused with what we're reviewing today. Today we're reviewing the book by the same title, but he's also the host of the Diary of a CEO podcast, where he interviews, just some really world class business leaders. Literally, not just business leaders, top world class athletes, actors, comedians, literally anybody in the top of their field, but a lot of CEOs. He's also, his first book publication came out a while back, I think a few years ago, which I read, and I enjoyed it, but I have to say I enjoyed the current book a hell of a lot more. The first book was Happy Sexy Millionaire. Don't let the title put you off. Truthfully, it did kind of put me off a little bit, and that's probably showing my age a little bit here. But it was actually an amazing book. It was really good. However, like I say, compared to the current book, The Diary of a CEO, it wasn't even in the same league as far as I'm concerned. I'm so impressed with this book. But just getting back into it, so with Steven there, what am I going to show you here now? Okay, the book is based. Sorry, I'm just moving around my little mind map here. The book is based on the fundamental pillars that he refers to, and there's four. There's four pillars that he believes that everybody should build either their business or, truthfully, their life on these four pillars. And it's the self, storytelling, philosophy, and teamwork. And he came up with this and developed these four fundamental pillars during this time when he was basically building his first businesses. He's built a number of different businesses over the years. But in his early days, when he was building some of these businesses, that's where he kind of came up with this whole concept of the four pillars and started implementing them. And combined today, these companies right here that he started out with have a combined value of over $1 billion. So I got to believe that they work. The principles work. But my key takeaways. So getting into as far as my key takeaways, well, there was a lot, and truthfully, there was a lot more. I just packed in whatever I could. I couldn't during this short review probably cover everything I would want to on this, but it really was, a pack full of information, really useful information. And to start, it's all about, he talks about the importance of self mastery. This would go back to the first pillar of yourself. So self mastery. But what does he mean when he talks about self mastery? Well, he refers to what he's named and tagged as the 5 buckets. Okay, you want to keep your buckets full. You always want to be putting things into your bucket. The first bucket, knowledge. Second bucket, skill. Third bucket is your network. Fourth bucket is your resources. The fifth bucket is your reputation. And once you're building your knowledge bucket, the best approach to take is to learn by doing. He's a big believer, and I do as well, by the way. That's why with the coaches that we have working for us here at One Source, they all learn by doing. I put them out working with clients. I make sure that they're using the system themselves. But I'm a big believer in the same principle. You learn by doing. So that one really hit home with me. But he talks a lot about that. He also talks about the best way to improve your skills is to, because again, that's your second your bucket. The best way to improve your skills is by teaching. And truthfully, that's exactly why I create these videos. It's a big part of why I do the things I do, is because I not only do I enjoy teaching others, but I know that by doing so, it's also, primarily it's improving my skills. So it's taking the knowledge that I learn and really embedded it into me, and it would work for you too. So he encourages you, once you get a certain amount of knowledge, that you should share that knowledge by teaching others. And then you're going to take it to the next level and start really improving your skills. And as far as building up your network, well, you're going to become eventually known as an expert in your field. If you have enough knowledge and you've really, you've mastered your skills, it's only a matter of time between everybody in your network starts to really look to you as an expert in your field. And that's the place you want to be. You want to be seen by your peers, by people in your industry, as you're an expert. So that's one way that he refers about doing it. He also talks about, as far as, some resources that you should have available. One of the most powerful things you can do is really master the art of communication. Communication is always key. He's not the first one to speak about that, obviously, but he does it very effectively. And when he the parts that he really drove home to me, and again, these are all things obviously I've heard many times before, but just it's always nice to hear him again. And like I say, he's a very effective communicator. But he really encourages, whenever you're dealing with anybody, whether it be a member of your team, whether it be your manager, whether it be a client or a prospect, always try to find common ground. Common ground is where the magic really happens when it comes to communication. Try to find some things that you both can agree on. There's a lot of data to support that if you can do that, if you can find that common ground, the individual that you're trying to connect with, it can become very agreeable to the things that you're saying. And that's one of the points that he really, tries to hit home when he's talking about communication. Another thing he talks about is, you have to discover and update your core beliefs. This I really liked a lot because, look, I've been through the Tony Robbins Leadership Academy. I've studied the power of limiting beliefs for a very long time. I use it in a lot of the coaching that I do in neuroscience. And trust me, your limiting beliefs, your core beliefs, really impact, how you see yourself, your relationship with yourself. But he refers to it as it's the first step to change is to become very aware of your limiting beliefs. And again, this is something I truly believe in. I truly do believe oftentimes awareness is the cure, especially when dealing with limiting beliefs. But one of the ways he says that you should go about doing it, well, is to try to, once you become aware, try to replace it with some new experiences. Try to get more data, try to get more evidence that contradicts that limiting belief. He gets in pretty deep. I won't get into it too much here, but he does a really, really nice job of explaining and making the point there. But it comes down to, you have to challenge your beliefs. This is something I've talked about, many people who practice either, neuro-linguistic programming or what I practice, neuro-associative conditioning. You have to challenge your beliefs. The best way you can do that is to ask questions. When you catch yourself, when you identify a limiting belief, to ask it some questions, to challenge, what would I have to believe in order to feel the way that I do right now about that? Challenging it. And so basically what you're doing is you're confronting it. And you're trying to confront it by convincing yourself with, some more evidence or some, compelling data that supports that it's not necessarily true, that that belief that you have that's preventing you from achieving what you want to achieve, chances are it really isn't true. He uses I think it was a nice analogy that he refers to it as if you were to put all your limiting beliefs on a table, the more you can challenge those limiting beliefs, the more you can challenge them. If they're all sitting on that table, if every time you can convince yourself with some new data, some new evidence that that belief really isn't true, it no longer applies. It's like kicking the legs out of the table. And if you kick out enough legs, eventually that's going to topple over and those beliefs will have no power anymore. They won't be a limiting belief at all anymore. And I truthfully, I believe that very much. I know I've done it in my own life. I've worked with others to help others do something very similar. So yeah, big fan of that. And he does a really, really nice job of explaining it. Far better than I do. He also talks about the importance of your story. We all have a story that we tell ourselves. And your story, the story that you tell yourself is really that it's gonna have a big impact on your self-image, and it's gonna cause either it's gonna build a lot of confidence, or it can go ahead and it can create a lot of doubt. It can cause some challenges for you to overcome too. So you want to be very careful of the story that you're telling yourself. One way that he talks about it is that, if you look at this image for an example, what do you see when you look in the mirror? In this case scenario, it's a great image, but you'd ask yourself the question, are you a pussy or are you a lion? To me, it all comes down to perception. It's all your story. Oftentimes, it's not necessarily true, but it's all about the perception, the way you see the words, the way you see yourself, the way you see the world. Everybody's perception is different, so you want to use that to your advantage. But again, and your perception is often dictated by your story. So the story you're telling yourself is going to basically, it's going to develop your perception, or it's going to help to create your perception. And based on that, in this scenario, you would make the decision, are you a pussy or are you a lion? And again, it all comes down to, whatever story you're telling yourself. So he goes on also, too, about expanding your network, the importance of having a strong network. You're not going to do it alone. You're not going to succeed in this life, basically. Chances are you're not going to succeed on your own. You're going to need others. So he talks about how you have to reach a wider audience. And he gives some really good tips, because his expertise is all about building social media networks and marketing. But he talks about when you're trying to build a wider audience, storytelling isn't just about the story that you're telling yourself. It's also the story that you're telling to others. So when you're speaking with others, what story are you telling them? And more importantly, how are you communicating that story? Um, he says that you should always try, whenever possible, you don't want to wear it out, obviously, but when possible, try to use the shock and awe factor. You don't become wallpaper. Don't just say it in a very bland type of way where it has no impact on the individual. Try to say things that are going to shock and awe that individual. Not necessarily always in an offensive way, even though that is becoming very common. But just try to, shake it up a little bit. Try to go ahead and do something that's going to be out of the norm, that's going to shock them, and get them to focus and pay attention to you a little bit more. This is very relevant in book titles today. Mark Manson, you're probably familiar with the book Mark Manson. I don't think I've done a review on this yet, but I should. It's a great book. But The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. I mean, just the word fuck in the title is becoming, it's a lot more common. It's done for one reason and one reason only, to shock and awe people. So it's not a boring title. And again, you're going to see it. I can list probably 5 or 6 right now, but I'm not going to keep repeating it. But it's, primarily it's becoming very common, and that's part of the shocker and awe factor. And in fact, it's exactly what I just attempted to do to you with when I said earlier, when I asked you the question, are you a pussy or are you a lion? Well, I put that question in there on purpose because I want to demonstrate the shock and awe factor. I didn't do it to offend anybody or anything like that. It's just done primarily to get your attention. And again, that's what he recommends. And it doesn't always have to necessarily be using a vulgar word or anything like that, but they can be very effective. But be creative, mix it up a little bit. He also talks about the power, let me just make this a little bit smaller, easier to navigate, to as far as your philosophy. What's your philosophy in life? Well, he talks about the importance in business and in life of the Kaizen principle. Now, I've done trainings on the Kaizen principle before. You may have seen it, maybe you didn't. I can put a link in the description to it. But the Kaizen principle is basically all about the Japanese art used in business of constant, never-ending improvement. It's something that's based on small little incremental improvements done on a consistent basis, primarily create massive, massive results over a period of time. And to demonstrate the effective of the Kaizen principle, their philosophy in life and in business, he told a story about Toyota and GM. Very, very effective demonstration. If you're not familiar with it, several years ago when Toyota was trying to break into the American market, they want to demonstrate their effectiveness and their principle of the Kaizen principle in business, in the manufacturing business specifically. So they put a challenge to GM. They would reopen one of the plants that GM had recently closed, and not only would they reopen it, they would hire back all the exact same employees. They would go ahead and give them the same jobs that they had. They would go ahead and put on then a hiring freeze where they couldn't hire anybody else. They would use the same equipment. And the only thing that they wanted to do different was to teach all the employees from the management on down the Kaizen principle and implement it into the day-to-day workflow of the business. Well, was it effective? Well, within a matter, I think it was less than 3 years. I think it was about 2 years actually, but I can't remember exactly. But I know it was less than 3 years. That particular plant became the most productive plant for GM. out of everything. The exact same employees, the exact same location, the exact same machines and manufacturing equipment. Everything was identical. The only difference was the Kaizen principle that they taught it. So I thought that was a pretty effective model to demonstrate how powerful that the Kaizen principle can be. So that's primarily about the philosophy, and you can use that in business and in life. He also talked about, which I really enjoyed, was the importance of failing. People tend to look at failure as a negative thing. It's not. It's not any way, shape, or form. As a matter of fact, he encourages people, to fail fast. It's a strategy that he incorporates into all his business models. And you should do the same in life to a degree. His model is primarily you try something, you either fail fast, try something else, fail fast, try something else, fail fast, so eventually you succeed. It's similar to Tony Robbins. He talks about the ultimate success formula. Know your outcome. Take plenty of action. Monitor what's working, what's not working. If it's not working, try something else. Repeat the process over and over again until you succeed. It's primarily the same principle, but he takes it to a different level, I believe. Steven Bartlett. He also tells the story to really demonstrate it about Tom Watson. If you're not familiar with Tom Watson, years ago he was the CEO of IBM and one of the richest men in the world. And he was known for saying, if you want to succeed, double your failure rate. And that's been around for a long time, but it's true. If you want to succeed, you have to stack that success on the number of failures most of the time. But chances are you're not going to succeed without failing sometimes. So don't be afraid of failure. Learn from it, move on, try something else. Also, he uses the example of, probably most people know about this, Thomas Edison, about when he was creating the light bulb, how he talked about, he said, I haven't failed. I just found 10,000 ways that it don't work. So, again, another great example of failing your way to success. And he believes in it so strongly. I thought this was really interesting. He believes in it so strongly that he recently created a new position that he refers to as head of failure in his organization. And it's this individual's responsibility to monitor the results of all the failures that all the employees are having. Again, to create that culture in the company, not to be afraid of failure. He wants to make sure all the employees are not afraid to try new things, to try to improve, constantly be trying to improve things, constant never-ending improvement, similar to the Kaizen principle. Not to be afraid to fail. But it's her job to kind of monitor it, to monitor that, how many times the employees are failing, keep encouraging them, and then basically seeing what can be learned from those failures, how it can be incorporated in, share those failures with the rest of the business so they know what's been tried, not make the same mistake so it benefits everybody. But again, to create that culture within the organization, not to be afraid of failure. And I thought that was quite unique. The title, Head of Failure, I thought was really, really good. He also talks about the power of self-reflection, another thing that I'm a big, firm believer in. When he talked about self-reflection, well, he talked about not only reflecting on yourself, but reflecting on your staff and everything else. Not to be afraid to confront uncomfortable realities. Generally, because we don't reflect on things, we don't do self-reflecting on ourselves, on our businesses, on our relationships, on our health. We do it because we want to avoid confronting anything that's uncomfortable as far as our reality. But he encourages you not to do that, and he's right. I'm a big believer in daily self-reflecting and monitor what I'm doing right and what I could be doing better, and I encourage that with all my clients. And that's only going to happen with self-reflecting on a consistent basis. He refers to it as the ostrich effect. Most people, they want to go through life and they don't want to acknowledge reality as far as things that aren't really going right. And what they do is they want to do like an ostrich. They want to bury their head in the sand. And that's very common in business as well. Managers and CEOs, well, they just keep doing the same thing over and over again, even though it's not producing the results, because they don't want to confront the uncomfortable realities. So he's a big believer in that. He also talks about primarily about how you have to look at pressure as a privilege. And he refers to, which I haven't read yet, but I'm going to. I've added it to the list. Billie Jean King's book. Pressure is a privilege. And it's primarily how you have to change your relationship with stress. Stress, people always look at stress as, and I got to admit, I've been very guilty of this, always look at as stress as such a negative thing. But you need to change your relationship with stress. Stress can be a very good thing. It can be very good for you if managed correctly. And again, I'm very guilty of this. I'm known for saying, I'm not a great man for stress. I don't like stress. I like things to go nice and steady. But stress can be a very positive thing. It can go ahead and it can be used to go ahead and increase your levels of production. It can be used to get you to achieve more, work more efficient, faster, stronger, harder. But yeah, you have to change your relationship with stress, and that's one of the things I'm definitely going to work on myself personally, and I'm definitely going to read the book by Billie Jean King, Pressure is a Privilege. But again, it all comes down to one simple thing that we've already talked about a couple times. It depends on your perspective, how you view that stress. And again, and this is a great scenario, coming back to our lion friend here. What do you see? Do you see the lion? Or do you see, when it's reversed upside down, the mouse? It's all your perception. It's what you're looking for. So that's how you have to kind of look at stress. He also talks about never having a plan B. And again, this is something I have to admit I've been guilty of in the past. Sometimes, not always, but I do tend to have a plan B if something doesn't work. But again, I'm going to focus on that because it makes a lot of sense what he says. There's been a lot of data and studies to show that, it can be very negative to have a plan B. There's really no reason to have a plan B because all it does is it distracts from your plan A. And he gave some really good examples about different studies. Can't recall exactly. I know there was one at Harvard that was done with a big group of individuals as far as solving a puzzle. And the thing is, with the puzzle, it was unsolvable. You could not solve this puzzle, but they weren't told that. The only thing that they were told is you had one group that were told that if you get the puzzle right, you can go ahead and you can move on to the next level. Okay, you would get some reward. The other group was told that if you try to get the puzzle right, if you can't figure it out, well, you can go ahead and you can move on to the next stage. You just won't get credit for it. But the study, and I'm not getting this probably 100% correctly because I'm going off memory here, but it showed that primarily the group that, even though the puzzle wasn't solvable, that were told that they couldn't move on without solving the puzzle. Well, obviously they put a lot more effort into it, and they came up with so many more scenarios, and their brain activity was monitored. They actually increased their energy level. They actually increased their power of focus. Where the ones that knew that they had a choice, they had that plan B, gave up very quickly. They never reached the peaks of energy and brain activity that the opposite group had. So again, probably not the best explanation the way I'm explaining it, but he gives some very good examples of it. But I am a believer in that now. It makes sense, and it's something that I'm going to incorporate into my life, and I'm going to start encouraging my clients to don't have a plan B. Don't be afraid to put all your focus, all your attention, all your effort into your plan A if you want to succeed. He also talks about your skills. But the important thing is when you're trying to develop new skills, make sure that they're transferable skills. When possible. It's not always possible, I understand, depending on your role and what you're doing. But transferable skills meaning that you can take those skills and you can go ahead and you can change them. You can move to a different organization or even change industries. Because a lot of times, as far as what you're being paid, what you're being worth, well, in one organization, in one industry, those exact same skills could be paid far less than they can in another industry. So make sure that the skills that you're learning are transferable, and if you're not being paid, what you're worth, don't be afraid to change industries. Don't be afraid to transfer those skills over to another organization or to another industry altogether, and you could triple, your income just by doing something as simple as that. And finally, he talks about to embrace your mortality. Now, this is something that I believe in, but a lot of people, whenever I talk about, how much time I have left and things like that, embracing my mortality, that I'm not going to be here forever. I understand that. None of us are going to be here forever. But people tend to have the ostrich effect with that. They don't want to face that uncomfortable reality. And they tend to put their head in the sand. But personally, I think you need to remind yourself on a regular basis, and he talks about this as well. You need to understand that, you don't have forever. So you can't distract yourself by scrolling on the phones, mindless, time on social media, watching hours and hours of Netflix and things like that. Your time is limited. You're not going to, and if you've got big, audacious goals that you want to achieve, well, you have to go ahead and you've got to put as much into every day as you can because you only have so many days left. So again, embrace your mortality. But those are primarily the key takeaways. Like I say, there probably was a lot more that I could have packed in here, but I'm just conscious how long I want this to go for. It's already gone longer than I typically do one of these. But it was just such a great book. Had so many really, really powerful takes from it. Packed full of information. He just bangs it out, bang, 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 one after the other. And they all hit home, and they're all very insightful and communicated extremely effectively. I would definitely put this on your list. Steven Bartlett's Diary of a CEO. Now, what I would ask as a favor, if you have gotten any type of value or if you got any value from any of the videos I've done, if you haven't already, please like and subscribe to the channel. Really, really would help me out a lot. And if you can, click that notification bell. And if you're really feeling generous, like, comment, or share this video with somebody else. Also, too, if you haven't already, download my free workbook. I've created a personal development systematic approach workbook that's based around focus, balance, and purpose, and how to condition yourself for success. It does sell on Amazon, but you don't need to pay for it. You can go ahead and go to the www.onesourceworkbook.com. You can download the PDF copy for free. Feel free to do so. Share it with a friend. It's the same workbook that I use to train all my coaches, and we use it in our workshops that we do and staff trainings around the globe with different corporations. So, also too, check us out at OneSource Personal Development Network. We consist of a global network of personal development consultants that are all trained and practice the same systematic approach to coaching and to personal development. You can go to www.onesourceict.com, or if you like, contact info at onesourceict.com. if there's anything you would like to work with some of our coaches, or if anything we could support you on. And finally, if you would like a copy of this mind map that I've just used here, you can go ahead and I'll leave a link down in the description that you can go ahead and you can download. But other than that, I appreciate you listening. Hope to see you again. Stay focused and stay strong.